Hello everyone, this is Pedro from Pythonista with one more video. Today is gonna be all about Git intro because I don't come from a software engineer background. It took me a while, I confess, to understand Git and how it works. In this video, I'll explain my struggles and what really made me click and understand how it works. And then once that was clear in my mind, and then everything else became very easy. And I use Git every day and I love it. So Git was developed by this guy here. If you don't know who he is Linus Torvalds. He's also the creator or co-creator of Linux kernel. The most important thing about Git is that this is a decentralized version control system. So imagine that there is a server or computer with a remote repository, and then there is a ton, can be 1,000 of computers that are local, that are working in different branches and versions of that software. And at some point, these people to collaborate, they have to sync the repositories with this remote repository, which is kind of the centralized in the sense that there is a place where people push and pull those versions. And they have then, once they sync with the centralized repository, they would have a full history of one of the most important thing to get your head around is how your local areas work when you are working in a branch. In this example, I'm not going to go deep into branches because that's a little bit more advanced. I'm just gonna work in the master branch, which is usually the main branch that all the other branches are branched out from. So wherever branch you are working, so you're gonna have three areas. So the working area, the staging area, and the commit, which is once the changes that are tracked gets written in a point that we call commit. So what Git does is it's nothing more than a text tracker. It also tracks bytes, but it tracks all the changes that you do in your file. And then you can have to pick and choose which files you're going to commit to the history. But once it's commit to history, that's written. And then you can then revert back to those commits. And then when I explain with a demo, which I'm going to do it next, it's going to be much clearer. All right, in the demo here, I have VS Code and I'm working in Linux, WSL. So Git comes with Linux. So if you are working with Linux, it's much easier. But if you are working in Windows, it's a little bit different. So I'm just gonna send you to the link. If you go to the Git website, so there is lots of instructions here, how to do that in Linux, that comes with it. Mac OS already comes with it, and also Windows is a little bit more complicated, but there is instructions here how you can do it. So I'm using Linux. Just follow that link, and then we'll be on that same position. So the way Git works, as I said, it's a system that tracks changes in your file. So there are two ways to initialize a Git repository. You either clone an existing repository. So let's say you are in a project and then you go in a remote repository like GitHub and then you clone it. I'm gonna demo it later, but let's start afresh here. So I have my file system here. I have this Git demo, but just for the purpose, because I'm gonna push that to Git later, I'm gonna create another folder, and then on this folder, I'm gonna track everything that's gonna change in it. So let's first create a new folder. I'll call repo, like of repository. And then I'm just gonna cd into this or change directory. And then to start a repository, as I said, there is a way there is one way that's to clone, and the other way is just to write git init. So when you do that, so can you see that it creates like a master branch as my main branch automatically? And then if I go here and do a list on my folder, there is a folder created called Git. And inside that, all the chains are tracked, all the history, all the logs. And I'll demonstrate that. If you remember that figure, you would have like a working area. And then my Git, everything that I do in this folder, Git will track. So if I go here on this repo folder and create a file, I'm just gonna call it file text, which is like text file. And then if I go here, can you see that my VS Code put the letter U, which means like untracked? So if I do a git command called git status, you can see that untracked file. But not always I want to track every single file. Sometimes I want to ignore some files. To do that, I create another file called .git ignore. So the .git ignore is just a configuration file. It gets pushed and it gets tracked. But here you have to name every folder or files that you don't want to track. For example, let's say that there is a file called untracked. And then I don't want it to track, and then I have to put it here. So you can see that the git ignore is untracked. So, but if I create a file, but inside the folder that's been tracked, and call this untracked.txt, is that the name? Yeah, untracked. Yeah, can you see that it's grayed out? So that's not being tracked. So if I do another git status again, so it says that there are two untracked files. Can you see that the untracked file has just been ignored by Git? So that's the meaning of the Git ignore. So at this stage, even though everything has been tracked, it hasn't been committed to a Git history. To commit to a Git history is a two-step process. The first step, you need to stage. Let's say that I want to, before that, let's create another file. Let's say I'll call it file2 for a lack of a better name. And then I'm just gonna git add. I'm just gonna add two files. I'm just gonna add the file .txt and the .git ignore. So those two has been added. So can you see that now I've got A, and then if I do git status, I'm gonna have change to be committed or unstaged. I don't know what VS Code stands for the A here, but I think it's added. But this file has been untracked. But even though we are tracking the changes, but it hasn't been committed and it hasn't been staged. But once I have got some files staged here, I can do a commit. So if I do a git commit, and then I always need to attach a message, and then I put like a -m, and then I'm just gonna write a initial commit as the first message. And then when I do that, so I create my first history to that branch. So let me just close this file. If I go to my git to here and refresh, I still have got this file here untracked. Can you see that's untracked? If I do a git status, so I've got nothing to commit, but I have still this untracked. Let's do some modifications on the original file and put some text here. So let me save. Can you see that now it's modified? So that's a file that Git history is aware. So because it's aware of this file, so it says modified. So if I modify this one, so that's still gonna be untracked because my history doesn't know about it. So to see your history, you have the git log. So that show you your log here. There's another way to see it, which is git log online. No, it's like, is that one line? Yeah. So one line. So instead of like you have more summarized version of the log history. So on the log history, it creates this hash code here, and it says also the message. So that's in order of the latest to the oldest. So with all commits, the person that's logged in is attached to this. In my case, it's my name, my last name. I've skipped this part, but once you install Git, the first thing, the minimum you have to do it, you have to configure your username and your email. So there is a git config file that I'll show you now. So git config, if I do a list, it says everything that's on my configuration, but then you can see that my username and my email is that. So to change or add, so you just use that command here. I'm just gonna copy and paste. So you have to config John Doe, but in my case it's Pedro. And for the email, it's the same thing, but instead of name, you just put email, which is this command here. So in my case, it's like git config -- global user dot email, and then your email here. So that's for the configuration. All right, so let's see the history now, the status. So I've got untracked file modified. So let's say I wanted to add everything to the new commit, and then I do git commit. Sorry, I need to add first. Git add, and then because I wanted to add everything, I just do dot, and then it's like everything in my current directory. So now everything has was added to my stage areas. But let's say, oh, I really don't want to commit the file to one. I wanted to send it back to the working area. If I want to move a file back, I do a git reset file to, and then what happened here now is that file was moved back to the changes. So it's not in stage now. If I do a git status, so that file goes back. So you can, before it's being committed, you still have the ability to move things in and out from the stage area. So let's go back now and add everything, and then check the git status. So everything's there. So if I do, it says change to be committed. If I do a git commit and the message, so yeah, another commit. It's not a meaningful one. The recommendation is that all the messages in Git needs to be meaningful. All right. So in this case, it's committed. But if I now go to git log, I have now 2 to history. Okay. And then I can press Q to get out of this. So that's the basic of Git. So the next thing that you wanted to do you wanted to push that to the remote. But for that, you wanted to have a remote repository that your local repository is pointed to. And for that, you have to use a Git provider, and there are lots out there, but the most popular one, and it's for free, is GitHub. So I'm just gonna open GitHub now. So I'm just gonna go to repository, and to create a repository is as simple as to just click new, and then I just call demo, and it's available. I'm just gonna delete after that, and then I'm just gonna put create repository. And then with that, you just need to copy this git remote add origin. So that once it's added, I just push, and then that gonna be sent to Git. And then if I refresh, so my repository here, and then all my history is here, all my changes you can see here, everything that got changed, that file, and then I add some text to those files. It's all here. So what I'm gonna do now is to do some changes here. So let's see, I'm just gonna open that file here, put more text, and then I'm just gonna close and do a git status. Yeah, I'm just gonna add, and then git commit message modified file.txt, and then that's it. So git status, and then I just do a git push, and then that gets sent to the repository. And then I go here, if I go to demo, and then I have another commit here, modify file, and the change was put more text. So just to finalize, let's say there is someone else that wants to contribute in the project. I'm just gonna go to my Linux terminal here. I'm just gonna open a session. I'm just gonna create another folder. And I'm just gonna get into that one. And then I would just want to clone that repository. So to clone, as I said, you have to come here and click code and do a git clone. It's cloned. So, and then if I go here, I log in, I cd into that repository. Yeah, that's my git. All my files are here. And then if I get a git log, yeah, I have all my history here. So let's open that in VS Code, and then I can collaborate. Let's imagine it's myself, but imagine that there is another person here collaborating. I'm just going to do another change. It's gonna be myself, but I'm just gonna do a change from a different folder in my computer, and then change, and then if I commit that, so you can see it's been modified. cd add, not cd, git add dot, which is everything in this directory, and then git commit m modified file.txt, and then to push now, I do a git push. Because I haven't set the origin yet, I have to put origin master, and then that will be pushed. Done. And then if I go back to my GitHub, I'll be like 4 commits here. There you go. So that's the introduction of Git, just the basics, but more importantly, you have to understand this working area, like untracked, tracked, staged, and which is the add command, and then the push command. Sorry, and then the commit command. And then once it's commit, you can push to a remote repository, and everyone else can go there and sync and then do their changes and push again. Thanks very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, click the bell, and like the video.